here at Zechariah 5 and 6, but before we get into the video, pause it, read chapters 5 and 6, come back, and we'll just walk through one section at a time together. Here we go. We have more visions from the Lord to his prophet Zechariah. It's kind of fun. There's a lot of interactions between this prophet and his heavenly tour guide, this heavenly messenger. And so you can kind of imagine as this angel is appearing before the Lord, receiving the vision, giving it to the prophet gives it then to Israel. We have it all these years later. Just this great messenger system where we get to hear from the Lord. Now, we have a couple more visions in this particular chapter, the first of which you may have heard before. It's the vision of the flying scroll. And so what they see is a gigantic scroll. It's unrolled. In my mind, I thought like magic carpet, just this big thing kind of floating around. It's 15 foot wide by 30 feet long. Very big. And incidentally, somebody pointed out that was the size of the courtyard in front of the temple. So bringing our mind all the way back to the law of God. And that's what this scroll is. The Bible here in Zechariah 5 says that it is the curse. So it's reading to us from both sides of the scroll. And it says one commandment you can read on this side. It says that thou shalt not steal. And then on the other side, it reads a commandment. I kind of imagine as Zechariah sees it float by, he reads, thou shalt not swear falsely or bear false witness. So clearly 2 of the 10 commandments are being read on this thing as it flies around. And what does it mean? Well, it's the law of God to all the world is what it's saying. It says that all this goes out to all of the earth. And truly, God's 10 commandments are for everybody. Paul said in Romans chapter 1 and 2 that everybody on earth has that God-given conscience that aligns with exactly what Zechariah sees on this scroll. I mean, God's law has never changed. We're living in this day where people are like, the Bible's antiquated, it's outdated, get with the times. God's law never changes. What Moses had on his stone tablets is exactly what Zechariah saw in the vision of this flying scroll. It's what Paul was referring to in Romans, and that law still works today. All people are understanding exactly what this, he calls curse, means. We all understand the law of God. There's a second vision here beginning in verse number 5, and it's kind of the weirdest one so far. Maybe it's intended to be weird. It's dealing with idolatry. So there's a woman mentioned in here who is just straight called wickedness. The angel's kind of perturbed with this woman, and he says this is the wickedness. And in my mind, I'm pretty certain that this is connected to when we go to the Book of Revelation, the female figure that is Babylon. And in fact, this woman ends up in Babylon, as we're about to see. But this woman, she's kind of discussing. She comes out of this basket. She's representative of idolatry. The angel says, this is wickedness. He slams the basket lid down on her head. And then 2 figures that are like storks. They have the wings of storks. A couple more women, I guess, that have the wings of storks. They grab hold of the basket and they fly off with it. And you can imagine how Zechariah must have felt seeing this. And he says, what is going on? And he says, they have taken her to the land of Shinar, which is Babylon. And he says they're going to go build a temple for her, and that's where she'll remain. Now, bear in mind, the she that they're talking about is idolatry. But the good news is God is removing the idolatry from Jerusalem, removing it from Israel, and it will remain in Babylon. And so God's bringing his covenant people home and removing that Babylonian idolatry from them. But as we can see with this, it's not removed from the earth. There's certainly idolatry all throughout the earth until that messianic return of Jesus Christ. Let's hit chapter number 6. These first 8 verses of chapter 6 are super cool. And what we see here is the mention of 2 mountains. And if in keeping with some prophecies, specifically I also think of Joel, who has mentioned the Mount of Olives. Zechariah later on, he's going to mention the Mount of Olives. So I think it's pretty clear that the 2 mountains, which are small mountains really, just like large hills, just outside of the city of Jerusalem, are the Mount of Olives and towards the east. And then towards the north is Mount Moriah. really it's just this place of judgment. It's a place of justice. When Jesus Christ returns to earth, his feet will land back onto Mount of Olives where he left. Remember, the angels told the disciples in Acts 1, they said, just as you saw him ascend, in like manner he will descend. And so in that moment of Christ returning, there is perfect justice. And what we see here is those two mountains, Moriah and the Mount of Olives, are called brass mountains. Brass is that prophetic material of judgment and justice. It was used in the Old Testament temple. So here you have these two mountains. They're not actually brass, but Zechariah sees them that way. And then there's these 4 chariots that are scattered in each direction, and they're all different colors, and they're carrying with them like 4 varieties of God's operation. So what I am being told by this right here is that God's horsemen are coming out of his place of judgment, and they are headed to all the nations of the world. And we've already seen that the scroll is for all the world. We already know God's word is for all people. And these 4 spiritual beings that are carrying with them God's operations, I mean, they represent blessing and curse. There's 4 varieties of these things. And what it tells me is God does not work in the exact same cookie cutter way with all nations at all times. And so you have these 4 horses, and yeah, they definitely resemble those 4, what we call the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, in the book of Revelation. The color schemes and all that, it is indicating to us that God's work is going out through all the world and revealing that he is pushing forward his kingdom according to his perfect will. And frankly, you and I cannot understand it. To us, it doesn't seem fair. Hey, why do they get a white horse and I get a black horse? And why? Where's the fairness? There's no way we can understand it. They're working according to his sovereign design, and it's just perfection. So let's trust in it. Then we come to verses 9 through 15, and this is real simple. It comes back to Joshua, the high priest, and bear in mind, the high priest of the Old Testament, the garments that he was commanded to wear were very specific, and on his head he wore what might be called a mitre or a turban. All right, we probably understand what a turban is. And yet in this paragraph, it says that they were supposed to fashion a crown out of silver and gold and to place it upon him. So this is weird because a crown was for royalty, it was for the king, and the mitre or the turban was for the priesthood, and those are not equal. They're not the same. Yet in this vision, God wanted for a number of years, while they were going to be building the temple, he wanted Joshua to wear both. And this is just an amazing picture of Jesus Christ, okay? Look, even Joshua's name translates into the New Testament as Jesus. This is pretty awesome. This man named Joshua, he's picturing who the Lord is. He is both priest and king. And of course, think about the book of Revelation. Jesus is pictured as having several crowns upon his head. So yeah, he fills all the offices. He is the perfect and divine authority. So here you have Joshua who pictures them both, but he wasn't supposed to keep the crown, and the crown was not supposed to stay on the priesthood. As soon as the temple was finished, they were meant to take the crown and place it into the entryway of the temple so that when folks were coming and going, I say folks, but when the priesthood was coming and going, they were supposed to look on that thing and think about the true king, the Messiah, the priest king. And this is a wonderful thing. And then this applies to you and I as New Testament believers. If you're a follower of Jesus Christ, Peter said that you are the royal priesthood. The royal priesthood, meaning this, man, we're not after Aaron. We're not after these laws of Israel. We are after Jesus Christ himself. We are in the lineage of the great messianic king. So yeah, Jesus Christ is returning. There will be judgment even now, going in all 4 directions of the earth. His judgment is pushing forward his kingdom. And Jesus himself, for all these generations, he has been preparing the world for his advent, for his coming. And are you prepared? Are you prepared on that day when Christ returns to his mountain of judgment? Are you prepared to meet him? And I sure hope so. I sure hope that your faith is in that Messiah. All right, this was chapters 5 and 6. It was a real joy, and I hope to see you next time as we take another look at Zechariah.